Bill O'Brien may have just enough depth at linebacker to make it through the 2025 season.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. I've been covering Boston College for over a decade. If you want the insight, analysis, and news on your Boston College Eagles, you are in the right place. We are a daily Boston College podcast. We do this 5 days a week, and you can find us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On today's show, we'll get into some long snapper and punter talk. We go, anything goes here at Locked On BC. How does the defensive line look going into camp? Are there some battles there to watch for? And the linebacker position, a position people had a lot of worries about. We're going to get into that. And to talk about it today, we have a special guest, and it's someone we haven't had in a couple of weeks. It is Mitch Wolfe of Eagle Insider. Mitch, how's it going?
It's going well. Excited to be back on the show. Had a lot of weddings and travel to take care of in the summer. I'm at that age, so it's a busy time spending a lot of airports.
Yep, I remember those days very well. I've aged out of that, but those were always a busy summer.
You've got toddler birthday parties to go to.
I do have toddler birthday parties to go to, and lots of time spent with toddlers during the summer. So that's where I'm at right now. But we're not here to talk about my family life. We're here to talk about BC football. And we're talking on yesterday's show. I discussed a handful of positional battles that are going to be something to watch for at camp. Obviously, and you know what? I actually forgot to put the main one on here. Let's kick it off with that. I ended yesterday's episode talking about how I thought Grayson James will be the starting quarterback heading into camp this year. You have a different philosophy on this, Mitch. I want to hear your thoughts, or where you're at right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think that it's just helpful to provide the counter narrative in this situation because, again, like you said, we don't know at this point. Bill O'Brien elected not to name a starter coming out of spring camp, which makes a ton of sense against the Halfley and every other coach saying don't let the opponent know what you're doing. And he, again, probably wanted to keep James on the roster, didn't want him entering the portal in the spring, so then they would have an issue with quarterback depth. But I think all your points about Grayson James likely being the starter are well made. I think that he did everything you asked him to do in terms of winning the job last year and being able to hold on to the job. I think the question is, and I'll harken back to the discussion we had last summer when James was kind of making some noise in the spring practice. And if you think back to that time, Thomas Castellanos was learning this new offense. And from what the reports were and kind of what I saw in the spring game, he would make some big plays here. He would, not really get the offense as well as you'd hope, but you could, and the reasoning I gave was that he was trying more stuff than James was. And, if you want to see the offense get to the ceiling, that's how you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to take some risks. And frankly, for most of the games that he started, that was fine with Castellanos. There was a few ones that really, where things went off the rails towards the end. With James, what the reporting out of the practice was that he was keeping the offense on schedule and not making a ton of mistakes, but not necessarily making a lot of the big throws that Castellanos was at least attempting, maybe not really making. And that eventually got him the job later in the year and then helped him win 3 of his 5 starts, I guess 4 if you want to count the Western Kentucky one. And then, he helped him win the Syracuse game, even though he had 5 dropbacks or 3 completions or whatever. But I think when you're thinking about spring practice this year, I think based on your reporting from other people who have been at practice, it seems that James is kind of doing the same thing. Keeping the offense on schedule, not making a ton of mistakes, but not really elevating the offense to where it could be. Now, he did do that in some of the games, so that's good to see. But I think also you take some of it with a grain of salt in that UNC at that point of the season had a pretty bad defense that was kind of, sputtering towards the end of the year. Pitt was kind of the same way. Maybe they were a little healthier, but they were also kind of backsliding at the end of the year. And then in Nebraska, wasn't really James's fault. Had no offensive line. Weather was terrible, so that's not all his fault. But with Lonergan, it seems like he is keeping the offense on schedule and he's making some of those big plays, which is a big differentiator. And that's what you wanted from Castellanos, what he couldn't ultimately do. And what James hasn't necessarily done in practice. And did to some extent in real game action. Now, again, Lonergan hasn't really seen that live game action aside from garbage time against FCS and group of 5 teams when you kind of can't take a lot away from those reps. And luckily, he'll have a warm up game with Fordham, who is a pretty bad FCS team, then gets thrown to the fire against Michigan State, then kind of another warm up game with Stanford, who's going to be pretty bad this year. So I think that there is definitely a case for Lonergan. If we've seen quarterbacks pick up this offense pretty quickly, James obviously has the advantage there, but Lonergan has been in since spring. So I think there's a good chance that he could win the job. And I think I agree with you, obviously, that you shouldn't flip flop back and forth with the quarterbacks. You can't have the office snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap thing. That's really bad for morale. The team really can't figure out who to rally behind. So I completely agree there. I just wanted to come on and kind of provide the counter narrative there because I don't necessarily disagree with you. I just think that I think we're really at a toss point right now, especially before a fall camp has started. Once we start seeing those practices and seeing how they're performing there, then that might change the color of this discussion.
And I can guarantee you that once we see it at spring practice, there's going to be no discussing this on anything.
That's also true.
Mandate coming from Boston College because I'm sure that's going to come.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think summer is going to definitely give us a better feel for what this quarterback situation could be because it really does feel like last year. I think both you and I were like, it's still Castellanos' job. James is battling and trying to get it, but it's mostly his. I honestly really do feel right now it's 50-50. Like it could really be either of these two guys.
And for what it's worth, Castellanos had to 1 get hurt and then 2 completely bottom out with his performance. Because even if you think about the 2 games before he got benched, against Virginia Tech, he did lose in that game with his turnovers. Now, they weren't necessarily bad decisions or bad throws all the time. It was just some, poor handling of the ball and a few poor decision making here and there. But he also had some nice throws and, was helpful in getting them back in the game for that little bit of stretch in the third quarter. And then against Louisville, he didn't really turn the ball over, but he just wasn't doing much. And then against Syracuse, he was just in the first half, he was just absolutely awful. And they didn't even go to James, that is, until I think it was the second drive of the second half. So they really held on to Castellanos longer than I thought they would and thought they should. So it's, Castellanos still had that job a lot longer than he probably should have. Even though there was that reporting that James allegedly was going to take the starting job before he got hurt in the spring or hurt in the fall camp, which I'm still a bit skeptical of that. I feel like that's the coaching staff maybe trying to cover their own butt after Castellanos left, but let bygones be bygones, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna have to wait. We're gonna see. I think it's really important. Like we saw 15 practices with Dylan Lonergan at this point. That's all we know about him right now in this offense. 16 through 30 or whatever it's going to be during this fall camp is going to be absolutely critical. And they're gonna do scrimmages. They're gonna do all this stuff to get him up to speed to see what he can do. And I think that is going to lead it. And are you thinking too that Fordham's still going to be an audition date too?
I kind of think so, and maybe I'm just wish casting in that. I almost want to see them treat it almost kind of like a spring game where you see the 2 quarterbacks alternate drives. I would kind of like to see that. Just I don't want to see the one person play a half and the next person play the second half because you're probably if you look at the Duquesne game as any indication. BC could be blowing them out, and then it's okay. Well, these snaps don't really matter either. I do want to see him against Fordham starters. Again, even though they're pretty bad FCS team, and generally FCS football, the transfer portal in NIL has really started to pull talent up as across all levels. So you're seeing the talent drain go up from the lower levels, where FCS football is getting worse and worse and worse every year because all the good guys are getting pulled up. And I think that's even true in the group of 5. You're seeing good guys get pulled up from there. So the gulf is wider than it's ever been between Division I FBS and FCS, and it's going to get wider and worse every year. So when I was looking at Fordham's roster, I don't see a ton of guys that could really compete at the FBS level, and the ones that could have already gone. I think there's maybe 2 that transferred. A few went up to better FCS schools, but most of them went that way. Then there was 1 or 2 that went up to FBS.
I think after the end of last year, we all forgot how efficient. What was Castellanos like 9 for 12 for like 300 yards or
Yeah, I
something?
mean, with our whole summer was talking about, okay, Castellanos has got to take better care of the ball,
Yep.
take better care of the ball, and he threw 18 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, and I think had 4 fumbles, maybe four, probably more. It's probably like 7. But you know, if you think about it, I think one of them at least was against Michigan State in the monsoon where he was diving for the goal line. I know we had the 2 against Virginia Tech. Oh, 1 against Virginia. The what was the return for touchdown? So, but still, like compared to the year before where he was fumbling like twice a game, that was a major improvement. So yeah, that's something that did improve
Yep.
ultimately.
All right. In a moment, I want to let's move off the quarterback talk. Let's talk about linebackers, a position a lot of folks have been really concerned about. We're going to talk about not the Davion Crouch spot, but the one next to him. We'll get into who that is and what the situation could look like in just a moment. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game with your friends while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. I was just using FanDuel yesterday for the home run derby. I got the winner, the catcher from Seattle. I was really excited about that one. I'm not touching the All-Star game, but second half of MLB baseball with the Red Sox on a 10-game winning streak. You can get all in on all of that on FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can get bet $5 and $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. It's easy to use, it's fast to pay out, it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get yourself started. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here with Mitch Wolfe to talk about the battles coming up during summer camp. This is our second episode on battles because I think that's just what Bill O'Brien wants to build at BC, and that's what builds good programs, right? Steel, iron sharpening iron, right? So the linebacker position, we know about Bam Crouch at this point. We know he's going to be probably one of the stars of that defense, and it's a big year for him. But it's that other linebacker spot. And I know you have some ideas of that they may switch some things around and move guys around a little bit. Mitch, tell me a little bit about where this second linebacker position is right now and what you're expecting from it.
So the first thing I'll say is that again, Davion Crouch is very much entrenched in what I have termed, I'm not sure if they use the same terminology, as the MAC linebacker position, and that's kind of the 3-4 analog for your Mike linebacker, your middle linebacker. Whereas the other inside linebacker is the Buck, which is more of a versatile position. This is where you see a lot of defenses will rotate players based on the opposing personnel, this situation, what have you. And because if you basically want to keep the Mike on the field at all times, because he's the guy that's calling the defense, he's the smarter linebacker, he's the one that's making the adjustments, the calls, and what have you. So Davion Crouch is going to play a ton of snaps as long as he doesn't get hurt this year. And he was durable last year. I think he pretty much played. He started every game. I think he played a ton. So hopefully he can stay healthy, knock on wood. The next one is interesting because I think you're probably going to see Owen McGowan be quote unquote the starter because he's more of your rundown linebacker. He's bigger. He's not as athletic as Crouch, but you can use him almost similar to, and this was the role that Cam Arnold played last year, where you can use them a little more in more versatile ways, where you can use McGowan on the line of scrimmage. You can bump him down there in certain blitz looks because even though he was better than I expected last year, which is good to see before he got hurt, but he's not somebody I want out in coverage in space. He is still a little more like Vinny De Palma in that regard. So I think you can see him play a good amount of snaps. You know, maybe he is still like the base downs linebacker, which I say base downs. I mean like your normal nickel personnel when you see the offense in their standard 11. That's what most teams run. And he'll be out there on early downs. But I anticipate on later downs them going to I think Jason Hewlett, the Michigan transfer, I think he's really interesting because he's a crazy athlete. He played a ton of positions in high school. I think he played safety, linebacker, wide receiver, tight end, and punter in high school. So he's, there are guys that are just like that. They just do everything. And he didn't play a ton at Michigan, but the little that I watched, I saw a player that could really be this hybrid type of player where you can actually play him in the slot as a hybrid safety linebacker. You can play him on line of scrimmage where he can be a real asset as a pass rusher because of his speed and athleticism. So I anticipate him being your kind of third down linebacker when you want to get more speed on the field against the pass. and even if you're still in passing situations, you want to come up with some exotic blitz look where you're going to have both linebackers mugged up on the line of scrimmage, and then you can create all kinds of exotic looks after that, which is something that I think Tim Lewis is going to have to do this year because, as I've said, I don't think they have the one guy as a pass rusher, and they're going to need to figure it out with scheme and recreating Dominic Rocco in the aggregate, to quote Moneyball.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how Hewlett really adapts to this team and where he falls on that depth chart, because the linebacker position, if people don't know about the spring, it was decimated this spring. You were out without Owen McGowan.
Oh, that's right. And Crouch was hurt in the offseason. You remind me of that. So he at least held on until the end of the season, then had to take some time off for injury.
Yeah, Bam Crouch was out. Kamari Dixon was out. Jalen Blackwell was out. Bryce Steele was out. And you were playing Vaughn Pemberton at linebacker. And I'm going to say that it's pretty safe to assume that he probably will not be in the depth chart at linebacker.
All right. Yeah, I think at this point it's, Steele. I remember we did that whole episode about Steele leaving in the transfer portal, but he's back now.
Yep.
Hopefully he'll be ready to play so they can, use him if they need to give Crouch a break, give him a series off or two. I think with him, it's just still too hard to know exactly what he can contribute because, thinking back to 2022, he was a really fun player and you're excited about his development, but then he has to take all of 2023 off, basically redshirts in 2024, and is only, playing a handful of snaps here and there. So I just don't really know what he's going to contribute at this point. Jalen Blackwell, it seems like that's going to be a longer term injury issue. So and frankly, I didn't think his play in previous seasons was anything to be super excited about. So I don't have high expectations for him. Kamari Dixon seemed to have some hype moments from the spring, or at least before he got hurt. So he could be something. Again, I'm not going to put a ton of weight on a guy who redshirted his first year because he was transitioning from safety. Will Straka, the transfer from D3 Wisconsin Platteville, I think
that's right.
I feel like he's just going to be a special teams guy. He's going to be your Joe Marinaro replacement. Probably not going to make the highlight plays that Joe Marinaro made down the stretch, but you can get him out there on teams and he'll be okay. And then I think the ideal is that you don't have to dip into the true freshman at this position. You don't have to put Zachary Thomas and Griffin Collins.
Collins, yep.
Yeah, you don't have to put them on the field as true freshmen. Or if you do, you just want to play them against Fordham and UConn, get them acclimated. You don't want to get them. You don't want to put them in tough positions. And then I guess I'm kind of interested to see how they're going to use Ella Boykin, the transfer from Barton College, because he's undersized. He's going to be an edge rusher, coming in at 235 pounds, I think, and I think he only played 1 year at Barton, so it's going to be another big physical adjustment coming up to this level. So I think they're going to want to bring him on a little more slowly just because that's a huge adjustment. But, maybe they can find some other interesting packages for him as well.
Yeah. Speaking of edge rushers and defensive lines, that's another position. Let's get into that before our next commercial break. Edge or defensive tackle? Which one do you want to kind of tackle here?
I think defensive tackle we can blow through quickly. So we'll do that first. So I anticipate. I think talking about this in the framework of like a 2 deep depth chart is kind of misguided because I don't really think you're going to have like these guys are the starters, these guys are the backups. That's what it is, and that's how it goes in terms of snaps. I think you're going to see this be a true rotation. I think if you wanted to have one starter, I would say it's probably Owen Stoudemire. He's played both defensive tackle spots. Like he's played some nose tackle. He's played some 3-tech. He's moved around a little bit. So he can be a guy that's more versatile, where if it's an early down and you're in base defense, you can put Quan Williams, Chuck Neneto, maybe Sterling Sanders as the nose tackle. And then you can play Stoudemire as a 3-tech or a defensive end in a 3-4. And then on passing downs, he can be your nose. You probably don't want him doing that a ton, especially in normal downs, because he's not that great against holding up against double teams in the run. But that's in those situations, that's where you're going to get Ty Clemens, Sedarius McConnell, maybe CJ Marable and Mekhi Byerson. Again, I'm not really sure what those last two, the late transfers are. They haven't played much the previous stops. So I think I can hold off on them. And then obviously, Sterling Sanders brings a highly touted true freshman. So I think you're going to see that be a packaged groups. You're not going to see it be like starter, backup. So I wouldn't say there's like a battle there. It's kind of just I would say honestly, it's kind of siloed where there isn't really a battle because the roles are kind of already set. It's just a matter of, are there guys who are going to play well in fall camp and say, oh, okay, well maybe we can get him a few more snaps in that role, or okay, maybe he's more than we thought. Maybe we can give him a bigger expanded role at doing different stuff. But I don't really see that happening for a ton of these players, just because I think they're kind of, a lot of them, they're all like redshirt seniors except for Sanders. So, and the 2 new transfers. But I think it's deep for now. It's just kind of a matter of who's going to impress and who's going to be, who's going to stand out. And again, I don't think there's a Cam Horsley or a real impact player there. But maybe somebody will surprise me.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Was you had a Cam Horsley last year that demanded more snaps.
Mm-hmm.
He got out there more. This time it's more, the difference between defensive tackle 1 and defensive tackle 5 isn't as big. So you're going to be able to rotate guys in more frequently and limit snaps, because I think that's honestly probably more what the goal is with a defensive line like this. Right?
You'll also see a team like Tennessee, their defense does this a ton, where they do and BC did this for a bit when Hafley was there, but they'll do hockey line changes on the defensive line, especially on the defensive tackles, to keep them fresh longer and later in games. And it's kind of if you're doing draft stuff, it's kind of rough because you look at a defensive tackle there and he's played 250 snaps and they're all in a very specific situation. So I think it was Omar Norman Lott, the defensive tackle, got drafted by the Chiefs. I think he was just a pass rush demon. That's all they had him do. And I think he played 250 snaps this past year. So I think BC's going to go that way. Moving on to edge, I do think Quintavius Hutchins is kind of the established one starter on one side. I think they'll play guys on both sides. I don't think you're going to see that be siloed off. The other one is very interesting. I've cooled a bit on Anya Nwosisi, given that he had a pretty quiet spring and kind of realizing that the competition he was playing in the Pioneer League wasn't that good. So I'm not sure exactly what he's going to be. I think you've mentioned Favor Bate.
That's how you say it now.
The Merrimack transfer as a guy who's really impressed. I am still a bit wary about an undersized FCS transfer who played defensive tackle moving to edge. That's a little worrisome to me. I think the Fordham game, it should be fine, but when Michigan State on the road, that's a whole different animal. So I think Edwin Kalingi had some flashes in years past and then kind of disappeared last year. I still have hope for him. Again, maybe not as a huge impact starter, but a guy who can be part of a rotation. And then obviously we mentioned Ella Boykin, Jason Flint flashed a bit. Josiah Griffin flashed a little less. Clive Wilson really struggled to stay on the field. And then Michael Bumpus, the legacy transfer from Brown. So again, a lot of bodies, probably not as easy to silo them off into specific roles. I think you could find a world where you could maybe do some fun stuff with a guy like Bate who has that experience playing on the interior, getting a guy like Nwosisi on the field just because of his incredible length. Maybe you play him more on the interior as well, where he doesn't have as long of a runway to get after the offensive tackle. He gets engaged more immediately, which allows him to use his length more quickly, gives the offensive lineman less time to prepare for him. So I feel like Kalenge is going to win this as the starter because he's probably going to be the most reliable on rundowns. Similar to McGowan kind of thing. But I think you'll see Bate. I think you'll see him and Bate play. This kind of reminds me of when I guess it was 2 years ago when you had Sheeta Salah and Nito Ekpala kind of rotating with each other until Salah got hurt again. So I think you could see a 2-man rotation the other spot across from Hutchins.
Interesting. Yeah, that's one position. Again, I just can't get a read on what's going to happen there. Just no one at spring practice just jumped out to me.
That's also a tough one to evaluate in practice,
right? For
most of the untrained eye, and even for the trained one, because especially BC's facility, when you are on the field, it's very hard to see engagements in the trenches. And obviously those are ones where you'd want to watch it back a few times. Okay, why did he win so quickly? Why didn't he win? And there are certain plays where it's just this doesn't matter. If they're running screens or play action rollout away from him, stuff like that. It's okay, well, this rep doesn't matter for this guy. And then, if he plays 5 reps and then they rotate a new guy and it's okay, well, of his 5 reps in this practice session or this part of practice, of his 5 reps, 3 didn't matter because they were a run away from him, a play action away from him, and a screen. And it's okay, I've got 2 reps to look at, and if he didn't win, like that's not necessarily the worst thing, especially if he's going against Jude Bowery, he's a good player. So
right.
I don't want to like,
it's tough because when you're in the spring practice sessions, right? Like you're field level, and there's also 6'6" guys all over the place. It's hard to kind of get a gauge. Summer, I'm a little bit more excited because we go outside and there's a little pitch, so you get a little bit of an angle, and you can actually see a little bit more when it's outside of what's going on. So that's something just a little behind the.
And Jalen Cheek almost took my head off last year.
It was
partially my fault. I was standing in front of something I shouldn't have that was like a metal bar right behind my neck, and so that was on me more than him. He was just trying to make a tackle, but I was like, oh man, I was really stupid for standing here.
Exactly. You learn fast when you're in practice, like to keep their eye on the freaking ball. All right. In a moment, we're going to wrap things up with special teams. Thoughts on punters and long snappers. You're going to want to hear our thoughts on this one. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black, and I want to thank all our first listeners. Those are the people who make their first listen every single day. Locked On Boston College. You get your Boston College news here. You're an everydayer. You listen 5 days a week. You are the MVPs of this podcast, and thank you everyone out there that does listen to 5 episodes a week. If you're looking for a second show to listen to, check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. He's talking about everything from SEC Media Days and all the things going on with the House settlement right now. Check that out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Now let's wrap things up, Mitch. Quick discussion here. Special teams, long snapper. This is a position no one ever wants to talk about, or people don't care, but it's important. Tell me about it.
So BC really remade the long snapper position this year. They had a lot of guys on the roster last year, which just kind of a weird thing that happens sometimes, especially that this will be an antiquated hallmark of the pre-House settlement era, where you could just have tons of dudes on your roster and teams would have like 5 long snappers for absolutely no reason. And looking back at BC's roster last year, you had Jackson Gugney, the former swimmer, Liam Conway, Bryant Worrell, the transfer from Old Dominion and Emory and Henry College, and Cooper Crook, another true freshman. And now there is only Ben Mann, the transfer from Yale, and Crook, who's back for another year. Now, Crook played in 1 game last year. He had 8 snaps, quite literally, against Pitt in the season finale, 5 on punts and 3 on field goal kicks, but that's field goals and extra points. I would love to know who does this job, but PFF has him graded on those 8 snaps as 27.8, which is terrible. Which I can only imagine, and given the fact that he has no tackles and no missed tackles, I have to imagine they just didn't like one of his snaps or something. I can't remember if there was a really bad one in that game off the top of my head. So he's the quote unquote the incumbent, but Ben Mann, who is coming over from Yale, has a lot of experience. He has 232 special team snaps, both he has tons of punting and field goal kicking snaps. So he has experience there. And I'm pretty sure on this that Seamus Florio, the Yale punter transfer, was also Yale's holder. So you have the pitcher-catcher relationship there of the battery where these guys know, here we go, how to handle each other's balls. So that's what you want with special teams. You want that comfortability. And that's what they have. So I think you're going to see Mann take that job just because he has the experience. Again, there's the chemistry with the holder. You know, you think back, I'm sure you can come up with a Red Sox example, but there are all these pitchers that have their catcher.
Doug Mirabelli and Tim Wakefield.
There you go. Perfect. Yep. I think it was Garrett Cole and Jacob Stallings when it was the Pirates. So that's my example for that one. But you know, you see this all the time. And again, take these with a grain of salt because again, I need to know who does this job. Mann has pretty good PFF grades for his special team snapping. Both they're all pretty solid. There's been a few missed tackles, but that happens when you're a long snapper. You're not necessarily the best athlete in space. So I think that's what's going to happen there. I think Crook might, get him another year learning from Mann, a guy who has done the job. Because last year you have Worrell come in who's done a little bit of it, but he isn't as experienced. You get Mann to teach Crook his ways, and then Crook is the long snapper the following year. So right. I think you've got this. I think this position is a little more settled than it was last year, where I feel like it really was a 4-way competition, which was kind of insane.
Yeah. Now, we look at, obviously, the long snapper is important, but we're running out of time, so we got to get through this. The punter position, oh my gosh, 130th in the country last year in punts per yards per punt, worst in Power 4 football, one of the worst in the country. Matt Turn basically, clears out the depth chart. Savenko's gone. Candotti's gone. You have Liam Connor going back to just regular kicks.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. And you bring in Andy Quinn from Ireland and Seamus Florio. I have my expectations for this position. What are you expecting?
I am expecting, don't forget Sam Stone is still here.
Oh, right. Sam
shockingly.
Yeah.
I feel like you've reported that Andy Quinn was very impressive in the spring.
I did.
With his hang time, distance of kicks, what have you.
Yeah.
And I think that you're going to kind of see, again, another rotation here almost. Because when I watched Florio's tape, and yes, I did watch Yale punter tape, my scouting report is on the website, I felt that Florio was very good he was what we wanted Sam Candotti to be. Where Sam Candotti was a touch punter where if you got a first down, but your drive stalled out, you would feel good about him getting the ball to the other side of the field and probably pinning the other team inside their 20. If you needed distance, he was not your guy. And I don't necessarily think that's Florio's game. He has had some nice punts, but he's also had some pretty bad shanks. And I would say there's more good ones than bad ones, but the bad ones are pretty bad. And there's probably maybe 2 to 3 a year. So that's better than what BC had last year. So that's nice. But
2 to 3 game.
Yeah, we had those. BC was having those. That was the per game numbers. I think you'll see Quinn be the distance punter. Like if there's a 3-and-out drive, they're inside their own 20, inside their own 30. Get Quinn out there, say,
boom it,
put it all in there, lad. Give it your best. And then if it's Florio, and then if they get a first down or the drive stalls out in your midfield, send Florio out there. You're like, okay, pin them inside the 20, and he can do that consistently. And that having both of those options is nice. Obviously, there's a world where they both can't do either, and then we're back at square one. And the reality is probably somewhere in the middle where, Florio has a few shanks again, and he's, has a few touchbacks. But I also wonder if, as Quinn gets more and more comfortable just taking more reps, that maybe he could just take the job towards the end of the year and just be the full-time punter. And then they can let Florio focus on holding. And he was pretty good at kickoffs as well. But also Yale or Ivy League kicks off from the 40. So some of those were a bit, I'm like, okay, maybe you're not ready for as long of kicks, and we'll go back to Lombardo for that one. So I think you'll see a rotation here, situationally specific, but I do think Quinn seems to have the upside to be the long-term answer here, which is hopefully good.
All right. Well, that's we have to wrap this up. That was our second part discussion on battles to look forward at BC camp. Mitch, where can people find your work?
You can find me at Mitch T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. I have a bunch of stuff coming out on BC.
He does.
On Eagle Insider this week. Yeah. Was a bit backlogged due to travel and stuff, but now everything's coming together. Doing a few of doing my opponent previews, which are the long treatises on everything an opponent has ever done. And then have the looking at what are the top positions or players that BC will face at specific positions. Those will be coming out soon. Also doing some fun quarter century looks at BC. So some of the best players the last 25 years, which was a fun project to work on. And we might even have a few more high school recruit scouting reports sprinkled in there. So busy few weeks coming out, a lot of content coming out on Eagle Insider. So make sure you're checking us out there.
Yeah, we're on the home stretch here, folks, in terms of content. Like me just coming up with ideas to talk about. It's coming to an end because next week is the start of ACC Media Days, which I always get excited about, and then they never talk about it.
And then nothing happens.
As I said on yesterday's show, Jim Phillips is probably the most exciting thing I want to see because maybe he has something new coming up for the ACC. Other than that, I'm expecting, we're going to play really hard this year. We're working really hard.
Jim Phillips is going to say, guys, we're going to do another alliance.
Yes, with the Pac-12.
It worked so well the first time. We're going to run it back.
Yep. But anyways, it'll still hopefully be things to talk about. And on tomorrow's show, I just put up on Eagle Insider. This is insane. I had 40 predictions for this upcoming season. I went over everything, and I'm going to give you 6 of them on tomorrow's show. I'll go over 6 things I picked out and why I picked them. I'll give you that on our show for Thursday. Thank you all for listening. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. You can check us out at Eagle Insider. Please come on over. We have a great message board, great content over there with lots of great writers. And follow me on Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Facebook, I'm on all social medias. Just look up Locked On Boston College or Eagle Insider. You'll find us. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.